What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. We're live here from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We've been away for a month, and I just wanted to introduce the immigrant story of the black man here in America, given from one of our real heroes, Martin Luther King, a Morehouse man. And we have an immigrant, first family of immigrants, a son of immigrants,
yes.
Parents, and going to Morehouse, and he'll tell his story about being an immigrant here in America.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's his name? What's his name?
Julian Hemmings.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, so my name is Julian Alexander Ariola Hemmings. I'm a first-generation American. My mother was born in Honduras in a small village called Aguan, and my father was born in a parish named St. Anne in Jamaica. My father and mother really encouraged education within the house, and they would have me read books to them at night so that I was comfortable with speaking. And my parents paid for me to go to pre-kindergarten, so I was introduced to, you know, words at an early age and mathematics. I went to Catholic school for 9 years, but I wasn't.
Good training.
It was wonderful, but I wasn't mature enough to realize that. So I squandered my opportunity at Catholic school. I was a tougher student when I was in middle school, so I got a 73 average. And my parents paid.
It's good.
No, it's not good.
73?
Yeah, I was
That
horrible.
couldn't work.
No, and then you know, I remember, you know, at the end of graduation, my father said, Julian, you know, I'm not proud of this. And my father didn't go to college.
Right.
My mother didn't go to college. And he said, we were on the bench. He said, Julian, didn't get angry. He said, Julian, I just want you to have a better life than I had. So when you go to high school, I want you to work harder than you ever did before. And I want you to take the opportunities that we've given you and use it for, you know, your betterment. And so I went to high school. My grade point average went from a 73 to a 93. And I remember when Eric Gardner passed away, and how much that kind of caused a new feeling within me. It taught me that my education wasn't for my own betterment, but I could use my education to help others.
Right.
And I remember I went to Union Square and I did a protest. I was about 14. And it was this weird feeling of just feeling one with myself. You know, I felt activism was a part of my own spirit. And so a year later, I met Reverend Al Sharpton and National Action Network,
Right.
and it's sparked even more. And then the idea of going to Morehouse came in, and I applied it was my first choice, and I got in.
But you came to NAN at 15 wanting
Yeah.
to be president.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get into politics. I wanted to get,
Senator,
yeah,
yeah,
I wanted to get into politics. But it's been a wonderful experience.
But you were fortunate enough to have spent 8 years of your life with a black president.
Mm-hmm.
So your forecast or your future was already written.
Without a shadow of a doubt,
right,
seeing
so
that.
That
seeing
was your encouragement.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, seeing that in my life showed me that the sky's truly the limit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to go back to Dr. King's point about, you know, the economic base that a lot of individuals have acquired when it comes to, you know, poor people of color. We don't really have that economic base, but the conversation's really changed, right? The economic base has been developed really for now billionaires and millionaires through tax breaks. And when it comes to, you know, poor working class people, our wages have stagnated. For tax breaks nowadays, we're talking about that we need to have them to match the rate of inflation.
Right.
And they're saying it's a good thing. But when it comes to poor working class people, and you're saying that we need to raise it to a living wage to match inflation, we're saying that it's socialism, we're saying that it's impossible.
Right.
So that's been a major part of my education too, learning ways to fix these issues that are going on within society.
Do you think we should have a little bit of socialism as this newcomer Cortez is preaching?
Well, I think socialism.
Well, Social Security is socialism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So socialism is different, right? Because it's like saying, should we have capitalism?
Right.
It's such a broad-based term that there are different sections and segments of it. I do think that there needs to be more government regulation, and it's not like our country hasn't had it before,
Right.
right? When our economy was in the tank during the Great Depression, we had government regulations to protect people,
Right.
and that's where Social Security came in, and Medicare. Medicare came in the 1960s under Lyndon B. Johnson
Right.
to protect everyday working class people.
How do you, what has Morehouse come to mean to you in the 2 years that you've been there, being in a predominantly or in a historically black college where Martin Luther King and many great other men have gone to school? How has that impacted you? And let me also, how do your parents feel about you being in Morehouse?
So, my father feels proud, but he always reminds me that it's expected. So there was always an expectation that I might have been a tough student when I was younger, but I was going to go to college, no matter what. So I'm fulfilling the mission that my father laid out for me. So there's a sense of pride within that for me, that I'm being a good son. Morehouse has given me an extreme level of confidence. And it's not arrogance, but it's a confidence in my own ability as a student and as an activist. It's taught me.
They challenge you all the time.
They've challenged me, they've made me better, they've broken me down, they've built me back up. They gave me obstacles and allowed me to overcome them so that I could be a better person, not just a student. So I currently do a research fellowship with the United Negro College Fund called Mellon Mays. And I'm an English literature major, and I fall in love with the works of William Shakespeare. And I talk about the intersections of race and disability. And looking at how examples of race and disability are social constructs, but are based in economic principle. And we act upon these ignorant feelings, not we personally, but our society acts upon these modernist ideals for economic gain.
Explain that.
I'll explain. So, for example, Industrial Revolution, I'll talk about disability really quickly. We needed to have a workforce that worked or looked the same, right? They couldn't have any kind of quote-unquote impairment because it would slow down the means of production. Those whose bodies did not match the quote-unquote prototypical body slowed down the means of productions, and those who did that were labeled disabled. We call people disabled if they're not functioning or benefiting our economy. A lot of our arguments for people, especially undocumented immigrants, that they're valuable, not because of their own humanity, but because they're benefiting our economy.
Cheap labor.
Cheap labor.
There you go.
So,
You know, in that clip we saw, there was something that caught my eye, caught my hearing, and there's something that caught my eye. Martin Luther King talked about immigrants. We are not immigrants.
Right.
there are blacks. My grandmother was, my maternal grandmother was an immigrant.
Yes, sir.
My father's family were not immigrants. As he said, people who were brought here. And at the National Museum in Washington, African American History Museum,
Yes, sir.
I found some errors on the wall, and I took photographs because they spoke of the slaves as African Americans. Slaves were not American citizens.
They weren't even humans. 2/3.
Precisely. Even before the 2/3, they were chattel. They were
Exactly.
considered as animals. And animals to this day have more rights than people have. You will definitely do time for killing a dog in New York.
Exactly.
You won't necessarily do time for killing another human being, and at that, a black person. So yeah, I'm glad to hear and see your development.
Thank you, sir.
Shakespeare, Othello,
Yes.
The Moor. Have you seen the productions by Denzel playing Othello?
Denzel did Othello?
Denzel, I believe, played Othello, and also
On Broadway. Is that
the
recent?
great baritone
Paul Robeson?
Paul Robeson.
Oh, that's years
Well,
ago.
I haven't seen a production with Denzel Washington, because if
Yeah,
I did, I would be
love
saying
this.
I saw it. No, but
No, I'm
I
sorry.
know-
It was Lawrence.
Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, I've seen
Lawrence
that one.
Fishburne.
I've seen
Lawrence
that.
Fishburne. Right.
But I wanted to say, going back to the conversation on Shakespeare, it's a great intersection of race and disability, right? Because Othello is made a general of the Venetian army, and he's given the hand of Desdemona because he's benefiting Venetian society. If he-
Explain who Othello was.
Yeah, Othello is a black Moor
Okay.
within Venice.
What year we're talking?
I couldn't give you the precise year, to be honest with you. I'd be misspeaking, because I'm not certain at this point.
To my Venice in
The 1500s.
1500s. Okay.
I hope. But when he's there, they give him high ranks. But no matter what his ranking is within that given society, he's still an alien because of the color of his skin and the fact that he wasn't born within this country.
Okay.
One of his
He's an immigrant.
one of his rivals is Iago, and Iago goes in and slowly but surely manipulates Othello's weakness, his insecurity of not being a man of the homeland.
Okay.
And Iago, and there's a scene within Act 4, Act 5, when Othello starts to believe what Iago is saying.
Right,
Not just on
right.
what he's talking about Desdemona, but for
Right.
example that he is a Moor and that he's never going to be good enough for the hand of Desdemona.
Right.
And also the
Right.
fact that Desdemona is somehow more beautiful because she's not black, and that she does not have a scar, going towards the conversation on disability.
Mm-hmm.
So it talks about how our society, those voices, manipulate us into having self-hatred.
Mm. Leroy, you see we're talking about people with immigration. Now, Leroy and I come from an era of kings and queens, the 50s here in Harlem. And we didn't have any of those problems, did we?
I'm sorry.
Immigrant problems?
Well, I personally have a problem with considering blacks from Brazil, Central America, South America, the Caribbean as being immigrants into America. I just have a problem with that because the history shows that we were dropped off at different points.
Exactly.
Amen.
So you
Amen.
just happen to be in Jamaica. Now,
Right.
the English make you think that as a Jamaican, you're better than the brother from Barbados, better than the brother from Trinidad, better than, and this is how they rule today.
Right.
Tribalism.
So we have to study, and this I didn't have an appreciation of while I was going to school. My epiphany change or happened in my last semester in school. And that's another story. My view of American history, of American economy, had the term we in it. I don't use we, because when we are talking about what they have done to us, we didn't do it to us. Mass incarceration is not, we have a lot of, we're mass incarcerating people. They are,
Yes.
not we. We're the victims. In an analysis,
No, some of these brothers deserve to be in jail now.
I'm not dealing with that. I'm saying, okay, well, no, I'm gonna deal with that. If you set up a circumstance where somebody is going to rob somebody else because they lack economic access to jobs, et cetera, or even education or trade schools, then you have set in motion that which the victim now appears to be the perpetrator of his or her circumstance. So we have an illiterate body of black people in America, not because we are dumb, but because the system has been designed that way. We have not been geared to have an education
yeah.
now. But
You can't use
What?
being black as an excuse for.
I'm sorry.
Can you use being black as an excuse for not being educated?
I would. Oh, please.
In response, I just thought of what you're both saying. And I spoke with a young lady at my church one Sunday. She had a stack of papers. I'm like, you come to church with, I said, are you a teacher? She says, yeah. I said, you bring schoolwork to church? She says, well, I'm going to sit in the garden outside and grade the papers after service. So I said to her, what do you teach? She says, chemistry. Young sister, she said, I wanted to give back before I went on to medical school. She's going to become a physician. So she says, I'm teaching for 2 years just to give back before I move on. I said, great. I said, where do you teach? She says, in the Bronx. Now, she said to me, in the Board of Ed in New York City, they're not having blacks and Latinos take chemistry unless they believe they will pass the Regents exam so the statistics will look good for the school.
Right.
When we went to high school, everybody in the academic paradigm took chemistry.
Right.
Everybody took geometry, trigonometry.
standard.
You took biology. So they are picking and choosing amongst the black and Latino population who will even get an education.
Yeah,
And I was appalled by the fact that they are systematically denying our children an education. They're not challenging them. They're not telling them this is the bar. This is the bar that you must come to and strive to this. They're not doing that. They're telling certain ones, well, you don't have to take it, you don't have to do this, and they're only getting a certificate. They're not getting a diploma.
Well, see, the ones that are brainwashed to think that you can't do anything because you're black.
Well, this is what they're doing to the children.
Of course they are. And
See?
we know it's planned genocide.
Right, so
That's all
with
it is.
regard to what Leroy was saying, this is what's happening. The Board of Ed is knowingly and intentionally
Of course.
denying young people an education,
Of course.
upsetting their self-esteem.
How do we change that?
Well, this is a piece of information that
We all
even
know
parents
this.
don't
And
know.
We look at the young.
how we change it is that when you look at the history, this is the benefit of listening to Brother Reverend Martin Luther King, because he studied history.
That's
I mean,
right.
he studied so much. So you begin to listen to these different individuals, whether they're theologians or whether historians or economists. You pick up a thread that the destiny of black people in America is not to be equal to these other people. And as a result, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. We're going to keep on going through, and if it doesn't work for that generation, maybe it'll work for the next generation. Maybe it'll not work. But we're dealing in a time which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said is the fall of America. And the arrogance of these individuals is not to let their house go to some jungle bunnies. So as a result, they rally behind a Trump. He says, "Make America great again." He means make America white again.
Yeah.
He downs everything that occurred under Barack Obama. And when he does that, that's a code word for a black guy was in here and he messed it up. That's how that is interpreted by Brother Leroy, looking at their language and looking at their mindset. But going back to the immigrant, to how we analyze, how I began to analyze Wall Street was when a brother, his name is Sam Anderson, wrote a book called Black Holocaust for Beginners. And his assessment is that Wall Street walled off the slave
Literally.
stock from the rest. This is how he assessed it. So we're the first stock in America.
Right.
So when you study the economy of America, you have to take your step, you have to take yourself out of it and look at the arena. You have to look at the arena. It's not we, it's them and how they constructed a society. And then we determine how we're going to run a society. That's where our minds have to be. Envision what you would want for a society. Because if this thing is going down, what's going to replace it? Who's going to be qualified?
All I was trying to do is show how a revived mind coming from a different environment, an immigrant coming here to America, even today, is not brainwashed by the problems of old. They believe in the system. They come here and they bring their kids here and they put their kids to all the bright opportunities that are available to us. Those of us that are born and raised here see all the problems, know all the problems, and become caged by the lack of self-esteem, lack of opportunity, all the wounds of the past, of slavery, not having an economic base ever in life, looking for reparations, and the newcomers from all races and economies come here and take the place of the renewed system. That's why all the immigrants are welcome over all the years. They were given property, they were given opportunity, and we were set up for drugs and you know, the prisons and all the other planned genocide. Crack was put in our neighborhoods to rid Harlem of black people, really. And we all know the successful people were given coke and stuff, drinking. If you had, you know, the 70s and 80s, all of those of us that were successful, success ruined us. All right.
So
Julian?
I had a couple of points to add to Brother Leroy's point, where he was talking about private prisons and the way we have financial gain from them. The school to prison pipeline is a way that we can have ourselves a permanent underclass within the society. For this society to function, we do need to have a permanent underclass, because we have our prisons that are privatized, right?
That's the planned genocide.
Yeah, we have people within Congress who are investing within prisons like their stocks, or have stocks in these prisons, and we've gone. The high population of people within these prisons are black and brown bodies, and if we're looking at people who are undocumented, right? When ICE comes in and takes them out, what happens is that these individuals are actually put into forced slave labor, just like what happens to African Americans within this country as well. And also, I just wanted to add, 65% of people are in jail without having their time in court. They're there awaiting trial.
So you haven't had the benefit of the activism, the black president for 8 years, Morehouse College, you know, the history of Martin Luther King being a Morehouse man. So your ambition to be president, you still want to take the same shape?
Well, I wouldn't.
You still,
no, I mean,
you see yourself doing something like that? Do you see all that Obama did and all the greatness that he did? You see what Trump came in and did midfield here and demeaned him and had him not even born in this country, told nothing but lies for the last 6, 7 years.
When I said I was 15. I just want to it's not. My ambition is to.
Well, you want to be a senator, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Senator.
But where life takes me is where I go. My ambition is to help people. That's what my goal is. Yeah. But what was the question again, Mr. Gilchrist? I can answer. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. I don't want.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
What is your ambition? What do you think after all this education, you'll come back to the hood?
Oh man!
And be a community organizer?
I want to. After Morehouse, I want to go to law school.
Okay.
Well, Melanie Mays is watching. I want to go. I might get my PhD as well. You know, but
You can go to.
I can do JD, PhD.
You can go. Well, 2/3 of all black attorneys in this country went to Howard University. And there is a program at Harvard University as well that you can go to for free. But we talk about that.
Okay. Well,
Harvard for free?
For free.
I would,
Whoa.
but it's not about me. But my goal is to come back after I get my degree and to help as much as I can.
What keeps you so humble?
I just remember my mom and dad. You know, I remember
Okay.
where I come from, and you know, you're raised to understand that no man is.
An immigrant family keeps you humble.
Yeah, I mean, you're raised to understand that you're better than no man, that no man is better than you. You know, I wouldn't say that I would just say that I'm stable. You know, I make mistakes all the time.
Well,
So,
humility is the most difficult thing to learn as a human.
I'm not bowing my head before people, but you know,
But I'm saying, well, you know the cockiness of Morehouse now. Come on.
Well, I didn't grow up like that. It's only
Okay.
4 years. You know, I grew up
All right.
different, and I was around you guys, and you know, we always realized that we were in this movement together, and it wasn't about a single individual, but it was about a collective effort.
Amen. Amen, brother.
Years ago, I was
wow.
down at Ebenezer with Daddy King and Mrs. King, and my wife and I were their guests on an Easter Sunday. And the young people had held a rally in Atlanta. This is 1975. They didn't have permission from the elders to organize the rally. And Daddy King got up in the pulpit and lambasted them for holding a rally. He said, you will never go out into the streets of this city marching or doing anything unless you've cleared it with us. He said, because there are forces and elements out there that will take you to the wood chipper. And he said there is a way to organize, and they were very strict about organizing. It wasn't just, we're gonna have a rally here and people just show up, no. And we know Martin trained his people, you know, as an activist. They had to be tested and tried before they were allowed to go out on the street. They were slapped, spat at, kicked, punched, and you were basically prepped for it, because if you couldn't handle it, you couldn't go.
Yeah.
And this is the thing we have to be careful of in demonstrations today. You know, people call a rally and everybody shows up. When we had the anti-Klan rally, there were people that came to that rally. I remember talking to Reverend Daughtry, and I happened to look over his shoulder and I saw a hand reaching out to grab a cop's gun. And I said, look out, your weapon. And he turned around, and it was a white person trying to grab the gun. Now, I couldn't see who the person was, but I had every white person in that area removed, because people will show up. They're provocateurs.
Yeah.
And they're not there for what you're there for.
Yeah.
They create a scenario, and then your organization goes down taking the hit because of
All right,
what
let's
somebody else
update
did.
ourselves to what's happening today with our president and this nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. But first, I want to show what's happened with the Trayvon situation. We just saw the special last Monday, 1 of 6. You know, stand your ground. The whole instance of a young kid going to the store and buying Skittles, and 17 years old, and being shot down by a local, wannabe police person, wannabe policeman. Run the video on the shooting in Clearwater, which Reverend Sharpton is going down to next Monday. Was it next Monday? Sharpton?
Man,
Well,
these dates, man.
But run the clip, and this is a shooting in Florida again.
I believe you're right, though. It could be.
We have that new case testing the Stand Your Ground law. The confrontation started as an argument over a handicapped parking space and escalated to a deadly shooting. Gio Benitez is here with that story. Good morning, Gio.
Yeah, Robin, good morning. It was all caught on camera. The argument, the push to the ground, and the shooting that ended it all. This morning, the man's girlfriend says the shooter got away with murder. You're looking at surveillance video of a fight over a parking space that ended with an unarmed 28-year-old father of 3 killed. Florida police not charging the gunman, calling it an example of the state's contentious so-called stand your ground law.
I just want justice. I need something to be done because this is not right.
Brittany Jacobs was sitting in her boyfriend's idling car when, she says, 47-year-old Michael Drejka approached to tell her that she illegally parked in a handicap spot. Her boyfriend, 28-year-old Marquise McLaughlin, had gone into the store to buy snacks for the kids. You can see McLaughlin walk out of the store. He sees and hears the argument, runs over, and pushes Drejka to the ground.
He's, pushing this man away from his girl, telling him to get away.
But that's when the irreversible happens. Drejka takes out a gun and shoots McLaughlin. McLaughlin, holding his chest, runs back into the store. Jacobs and the children watching from the car.
He collapsed in front of my son, and within 30 minutes, he was gone.
McLaughlin was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. This morning, there are reports that Drejka, the shooter, has been known to have angry encounters over parking.
Out here, he said he'll shoot me.
The store owner says he's even had to call the cops on him for confronting other customers over parking.
For a parking lot, for a stupid reason, just to argue, just to find someone to argue with.
But police say this shooting was self-defense. The Stand Your Ground law gives Floridians the right to protect themselves if they feel threatened. It was used as the defense argument for former neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman, who killed unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin back in 2012. The shooting and Zimmerman's acquittal sparking national outrage. Back in Clearwater overnight, a girlfriend asking for justice.
He was a good man, and all he was trying to do was just protect his family.
Meanwhile, the local sheriff there says that even though they believe the shooting falls under that stand your ground law, he's not saying he agrees with it. Police will now send the case over to the state attorney's office for a final decision, Robin.
All right, Gio. Joining us now is our senior legal correspondent and analyst, Sonny Hostin, a former federal prosecutor. Good morning, Sonny. I mean, we saw this video and we've been talking about it. Many people have. Is being shoved to the ground justification for this law? And you can see that Marquise was walking away, was going back to his car. He wasn't continuing to confront him.
That's the problem with the stand your ground laws. I mean, it allows a person to use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that they are in danger of any harm or death. And it also sort of eliminates this duty to retreat. It used to be when you were in public, you had to flee, you had to retreat from a situation. Now, even if the attacker, alleged attacker, is retreating, you can still use deadly force against that person.
I know if they continue to show the video, I know we're stopping it here as he's getting shot, but he was clearly turning and walking back to his car. He comes out of the store. He sees this confrontation. We heard in the piece his girlfriend said he was doing nothing more than protecting his family and shoving him to the ground. Why isn't that justification?
Yeah, why wasn't he standing his ground?
Right.
And that's the tricky thing about stand your ground. Perhaps he was feeling threatened. Perhaps he was feeling the need to defend himself and to defend his spouse, to defend his child. But then it shifts when he pushes the other person, and now that person can stand their ground. It's sort of just the wild, wild west. Prosecutors don't like the stand your ground laws. When it was passed in 2005, prosecutors opposed it, law enforcement officials opposed it. But here we are, years later, and 24 states have passed these laws. 24 states? Yeah, or a little over 24.
Okay. We heard in Gio's piece the store owner and others saying that the shooter is known to be having altercations like this, as far as not as shooting, but altercations with people parking. So will that play in if he is charged, play into it, because it's almost like he's looking for a fight?
You would think, but stand your ground laws were meant to allow this kind of behavior. They were meant to make sure that average residents could protect themselves without fear of not only criminal prosecution, but civil prosecution as well. So the question is, will the state's attorney charge this person? If past is prologue, we've seen what happened in the Trayvon Martin case. Prosecutors lose these cases. In Florida,
as you see, we got another sick one here.
You know,
Trump is emboldening all these people. That's what I wanted to bring up about our president. We have a Klansman in the White House, and we have all these stand your ground laws in 24 states now. Is there a race war coming? Huh? What's up?
This stuff about race war. I listened to radio station it's 770 on AM dial. This guy named Don Batchelor, he's been continually talking about Civil War.
Right.
Civil War.
Right.
And the way he does it, he'll interview an author of a book relating to Civil War, the Civil War.
Right.
And then he'll say, could these same conditions arise today? And then he'll interview somebody on the Revolutionary War. And then he'll slide in, can these same conditions arise today? And I'm sitting there listening, I'm saying, what is this guy talking about? Now, when you talk about race war, the majority of the weapons in America are owned by Caucasians.
That's right.
Blacks don't have. When it's revealed that Caucasians have these weapons, they say this guy is a collector, but the guy's really a gun dealer.
Right.
He'll have 18,000 rifles in his home,
Right.
50,000 handguns, 432 hunting knives. So how can a guy be a collector of all this stuff?
Right.
I'm talking about in New York State. So a race war that black people have to be aware of is the war on black people as the dupes in an economic system that could go sour, and they blame it on us.
Right.
That's why the we assessment of the economy, the we is not we, it's they. They are fumbling and bumbling around with the economy, and it can go south. And we have been the scapegoats in this country, while at the same time, not equal, but at the same time, we're the conscience of this country.
Amen.
Witness Martin Luther King and any other endeavor to bring about human rights. But what I saw in that little clip is this: the black woman is not to be protected and respected.
Right.
All right. That's why the guy could say, "Hey, it was stay on your own ground." And then to get two Negro women on a station to talk about the issue, and they talking from a Negro personality or perspective, is an insult to black they talking legalese, and it ain't legalese. It's a black and white thing. The man was arguing with somebody. He's not even disabled. There was a whole bunch of parking spaces in that place.
Right.
This is a setup, and that's how this thing.
But this guy had past experiences with this. The owner of the store said he brought his gun
It's none of
that
his
particular
business
morning.
if someone is parked in a
But he
handicapped parking
had
space.
beefs before that. You missed that part.
So what we're saying,
He just came there with a beef. A black man showed up, and he's got a chance to kill a black man.
another black man said,
right.
this guy is always arguing.
He's probably a Trump follower.
And probably so. But the thing is, when you talk this thing, we cannot be blind to what we know intuitively is taking place in a situation. When we get involved in the legal talk and the chitter-chatter, we divert the understanding of our people. Our people are looking at a thing and they know it ain't right.
Right.
And then you're going to talk about the possibility of this and the possibility of that because you got a little job.
Only because of the fact
you got a little
that
job to
Wait a
come
minute.
on
No,
station
Leroy,
being commentated.
Leroy, the fact remains, there in Florida, we had Trayvon Martin go through the same thing. He was acquitted.
It
We
doesn't-
have to fight this law to stand
It is
around. We
wrong.
know it's wrong.
It's definitely
Of course it's
wrong.
definitely wrong.
Can I add
Ain't
before-
nothing right about what we watch.
We have to be
But
true.
because of the law, stand your gun law.
Correct. We have to be true
Stand
to
your-
ourselves. We can't be on TV talking when we're dealing with a black issue and talking to someone as though we're going to try to convince Caucasian people to our way of thought or show that we're nice and we're educated and all this other kind of bull crap. And that's what I see in that little clip. Not the shooting part. I'm talking about the commentary between
Oh, well,
Sonny
I was discussing the law.
So
That was a courtroom.
I really would
That's
like
what
to.
happens in the courtroom. They casually discuss what the law is.
I think we have to really talk about, you know, the importance of talking about the systems that are going on, right? So the Stand Your Ground law was passed by Governor Jeb Bush. If you're looking at, for example, the Cleve Browder documentary.
2006?
But the people who were behind Jeb Bush in that decision was the NRA, some of his major donors.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
So
that's right.
and
They wanted to sell more guns.
Exactly, because when the gun manufacturers are buying, or when the gun manufacturers are selling their product at a high rate, they're getting a lot of money off that. The NRA,
See, this is why they passed the law.
Yeah, the NRA.
They want black people to go out and buy guns.
The NRA and other gun lobbyists, they somehow claim that they're in support of the Second Amendment. But we have, for example, individuals, or I think this is a young man's name is Cody, and he created a way to 3D print guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
This is the latest.
And Donald Trump, well, President Trump said,
Trump.
I talked to the NRA, and we are both very angry about this. You're the President of the United States of America. Why are you talking to gun lobbyists in order to understand how you should approach the law?
Because he's a Russian spy.
He has donors coming in, paying for him to say what they want to say. He's a puppet. So,
Exactly.
So I think that's another thing, because we have laws like that were passed by the Supreme Court of the United States of America called Citizens United, which declared that free speech, that political donations are free speech, thus protected by the First Amendment.
Okay.
So if we want these things to change, the conversations on the law are extremely important.
Okay.
This video, beyond what they had to say, they missed the whole point here. It's not about the statute of the law. We all know the statute of the law in Florida would stand your ground. That was a murder. It was a homicide.
That's
Just like we saw Eric Garner.
Right.
Right? And in the Eric Garner piece, people talk about police regulations and not to use the chokehold. That's bull. That's bull. Because state law said before Eric Garner was murdered that you can't do that. That's not anything that has nothing to do with police policy and procedure. The law states it's a felony to restrict the person's airway by choking them or cutting off their blood supply to the brain. That law was on the books years before Eric Garner was murdered. And everybody's talking about stupid police policy. That's not the discussion. The discussion is those cops committed a crime.
And the enforcement of it.
They engaged in it. They acted in concert. If you're outside the store and we go inside to stick it up and we take off and everybody gets caught, and you say, well, I wasn't in there. You know, I wasn't in the store.
But
you're acting in concert with us inside the store. And if we kill somebody in the store, you're still going for the murder. Every cop that was present at Eric Garner's murder should be charged, not just Pantaleo and the colored sergeant that was there. All 5 officers need to be charged. Also, this shooting in Florida was murder. You saw it. It was very simple. He pushed the guy down. You cannot use deadly physical force because somebody pushed you down. The brother did not go after him. He pushed him down. Did he go after him and pummel him in the ground or anything? No. He pushed him, and where he was standing when he pushed him is where he was when the guy reached for his gun. And the brother was moving, turning to go in the opposite direction. So the issue is not about...
he pushed him away from his girlfriend.
From his girl. So it's not, for them to be there, just as you said, for them to be talking about stand, we don't need to hear about stand your ground.
That's why he wasn't arrested.
It's not a justifiable...
He wasn't arrested for that.
No. Sonny is an attorney, all right? Sonny's an attorney. She should be able to argue, and this is where state legislators have to be held accountable for the laws that they put on the paper. Just as the state legislature in New York says, all a police officer has to do in New York is to articulate. This is what's taught in the academy. You have to be able to articulate the reason for you doing what you have done. All right? You have to be able to orate and explain it to a jury. I shot Leroy because I was in fear of my life. That is called an affirmative defense. If you say that, you automatically walk. That's not right.
Is that taught in the academy?
Yeah.
To say that?
To articulate. If you kill somebody, they're not saying to you, there are 7 reasons whereby you can justifiably kill somebody in New York as a police officer. 7.
You're taught to say.
But they're telling you to say and articulate that you were in fear of your safety. Now, you've got cops out there that are scared. They're pissing in their pants. They come out of the academy. Why? They never been around black people, Latinos. We don't need to be hiring people from Buckwalk, Suffolk County, and upstate New York, all right? There are cops coming in here. They've never interacted with a person of color until they've gotten into the academy and saw another black person in the academy. They don't belong here. Why don't they work where they live? We don't need them here. But they are scared. And there's nothing worse than putting a gun in the hand of a person that's afraid. That's like putting a drunk behind the wheel of a car.
Right, right.
All right?
Ooh.
So to articulate, I've been in situations where I had the right to kill people, justifiably, morally, ethically. I never shot anybody. All right? I was in a bank robbery and the guy's holding the gun on me because he recognized me. He said, "You better not move." I said, "As long as you take the bank's money and don't bother anybody, you'll leave here alive."
Well, what we're talking about is empowering. No, you're absolutely right, Graham. But see, this president has set up, well, the system has set up. The president's just conning everybody into brainwashing everybody to think that there's
No, that's where
white
the people
supremacy.
are. He's not brainwashing
Well,
them. That's where this country is.
He gives them backup.
That's the mindset of the people in this country. And we need to understand.
We have the same problem with a black man in the White House.
It's the same people. When you saw it when Obama was inaugurated, they conspired to do everything against him. It's the same people.
There's less shame, and
That's right.
Now they
It's
have no
emboldened.
shame.
It's
about
emboldened.
it. Emboldened now. They're just ready to grab a gun, and this Daniel Law is just empowering people. So what do we do about this?
I wanted to say that
24 states.
Brother Witherspoon left out a very key part to your story about be able to articulate. Be able to articulate after 48 hours.
I wouldn't need 48 hours to explain
I'm
why
saying
I
that.
shot you.
I'm
But
saying
they
that.
Because I know
give you
before I
48
shoot you why I'm
but
going to
they
shoot
give you
you.
48 hours
brother,
to
but
come
But
up with
they
it.
were doing away with
That's
that. They
right.
were doing away with that.
But they
You see,
didn't.
And I've been on shootings.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about
I've
that.
been on
Leroy.
shootings. A friend of mine killed my neighbor's ex-husband. Now I come out of my house, and so I go across the street into the house. There's like 30 cops in there, and I hear this guy, "I had to shoot him, I had to shoot him." I'm looking, what are you doing here? I knew the guy. Now I took him to the hospital for evaluation. He shot the guy 5 times. The guy was a 3rd-degree black belt. He was a 2nd-degree black belt. And they got into it, all right? Now, the guy had threatened to cut this woman up in the apartment. Long story short, I told him in the car, and he was freaking out of his head. He had never shot anybody. He had never seen anybody shot, let alone the fact that he shot them. Police officer, yeah. I said to him, I said, "We're going to the hospital. You're going to be evaluated. You're going to speak to a psychiatrist as well. All right? When you come back, you're going to be interviewed. Your story and the forensics have to match up to your girlfriend's story. Otherwise, it's a wrap. All right? Once we put everything together, everything has to fit." I said, "So forget about him. He's dead now. You need to go back from the time you got there till the time of the shooting and remember everything, because they're questioning her.
Right.
This is not about lying. You can't make nothing up. All right? They're questioning her at the house now. I have you here. I'm taking you to the hospital. When we come back, you're going to be questioned. And everything has to fit. And it wasn't one of these, "I was in fear for my safety." The guy was definitely going to kill this woman in her apartment.
Okay.
And he had a violent past, and he had put 5 cops in the hospital himself in another altercation. So this guy was a dangerous
Fear for your
dude.
life.
This wasn't somebody just pushing somebody down, and it wasn't anything like that.
I only mentioned the 48 hours because that's what we're confronted with. It might be more. Is it 3 days or 2 days?
No, it's 48 hours.
They were looking to do away with the 48-hour rule.
But they still got it.
But they have 48 hours to make up a story.
Yeah.
What you're saying. Yes, Julian.
I wanted to add, to what Brother Leroy is saying and Brother Graham is saying, is that, our conversation cannot just end with laws, right? We have to talk about the enforcement of the law,
Right.
irrespective of the individual's race, gender,
Right.
or
Okay.
you know, or class within this country. And so because what happens is that the powerful, as you were saying, becomes more emboldened to take actions against the most vulnerable.
Right.
And there's there's a novel called 1984,
Yeah.
and there's
Oh,
the concept
George Orwell.
called groupthink. And so what happens is our televisions, right, are some of these
Controlling.
some of these channels are so off the market that they make the vulnerable look like the most dangerous, and they make the most dangerous look like the vulnerable a lot of the time.
It's intentional.
Have that.
And the guy's name in there is Winston, you know. 1984.
You like 1984?
George
you liked
Orwell.
it? Amazing.
We,
Awesome.
we have to really value brothers and sisters like Brother Julian, who is spearheading the educational opportunities that exist, and give them our unified support,
Amen.
that they are going to be carrying on that which we have theoretically brought to this point.
All right.
And the more we can show them as examples of the intelligence among us as a people, the better off our group is.
Right.
Right.
Because he's going to be a symbol, like you're in National Action Network. Somebody in that audience has a child who wants to do or excel. So we really have to support these brothers and expect the best from them. You know, our expectations have to be very high. And when we see these brothers, we're actually looking at the summary of the work of your dad, your mom, you know? And every time I see a young brother like you, I say, look, every day, thank your mom and dad for what they have done to get you where you are.
See? I tell him that all the time.
I'm just looking, I'm
excellent.
looking at his
I'm
face,
telling you. Huh?
and I'm seeing the maturation. I'm
Yeah, see
thinking
it?
back,
Yeah.
you know, some of the old photos that we have when you first came
He was an
here.
angry
And-
It's the
kid.
facial hair. I think.
Well, no, you're maturing. You're not just physiologically, mentally, psychologically, academically. I always challenge students in my lectures. I don't care what profession you choose. Your education is not to buy a car, a house, and a flat screen TV. I want to know, no matter what profession you choose, every profession negatively impacts black people. Every profession. And I mean every profession. I want to know what you're going to do in your chosen profession to lessen that negative impact upon your people. And if you're not thinking about that, you're not fit to have the job.
You know, sir. There's a political philosopher. His name is John Rawls, and he has this thought experiment called the veil of ignorance. And so what it does is that it says if you didn't know if you were going to be born black, or male, or gay, or straight, or able-bodied, or disabled, would you be comfortable taking the lottery of being born on this planet? And if the answer is no, that means you have some work to do. So always remembering that, you know, what I have a lot of the time with the father and the mother, those are gifts. And knowing that another child who might not have it, his life chance could be negatively affected, and that's not fair for him or her.
But it's no excuse.
It's no, and that gives you the right to fight for others.
Like
yeah.
it's, you can't, see, I think of being black as a blessing.
It is.
And because there's no progress without struggle, no matter what you say.
But you know,
you
Mr.
have to understand that everything is a gift to you, and if you don't take advantage of what's in front of you, then no matter who you are and what you look like, you can't succeed. So being black is a blessing. Never mind what anybody said about us.
Being alive
you don't have
is
to
a blessing.
Yay, amen.
And we have to, when we get to these places, we have to remember that our job is to expand opportunities for every single
That's right.
person, irrespective of what they look like or where they come from.
Yeah, you judge a man by the content of his character. That's what I always.
I feel like I heard that before.
And that's why I start off with Martin all the time. I mean, I say that's my Jesus. I mean, black Jesus. And
Jesus
he led
was
the
black,
way.
so
I know, I know.
He's not Black Jesus.
No. I'm just being.
What's his name? Wasn't
I
Black
just,
Moses.
it gives me comfort. It gives me comfort.
I got back from L.A. this morning, and I was driving through L.A. yesterday, and we're driving down blocks and blocks and blocks, and there were tents on the sidewalk.
The homeless in L.A.
Anaheim,
Wow.
Walmart, no, Disney.
Let me
Disney.
tell you, we were not that far from the airport, but various sections. They're predominantly Mexicans and blacks.
Tell it.
People can't afford to live in
Tell it.
central LA and downtown LA because of the rents, the gentrification.
Tell
Just as it's going on here, it's there. I see women sleeping on in the bus stop on the bench.
Tell it.
Homeless. People have a shopping cart next to the bench at the bus stop. That's where they live. That's where they live in Los Angeles. People are in tents, living in and you would imagine there'd be a number on every tent as though it was the address of the building, because these buildings are shut down. There's nobody in these buildings. There was a tent, and this is going for blocks. You can't. It's far beyond anything I've seen, even in New York. And
Well, it's good weather out there.
yeah.
Well, no, they're there because they can't
But the
afford
You know what I
temperatures,
mean.
they don't have a winter. But the temperatures last week were up to 110, 115 degrees down in the valley. And there are people suffering everywhere.
There is a
Capitalism,
unregulated capitalism.
you know, deregulation, all this stuff, it is killing people.
Well,
The greed factor of the human experience is killing people.
You can see that the 8 years that Obama was in, he tried to be fair and get us some justice. And this clown we have in the White House now, I don't know how we're going to get rid of him. But he's emboldening these stand your ground laws and emboldening racism and classism and all these negative inputs that we've had to war with forever. And we as people of color have to wage a spiritual war. That the only outlet is that, you know, what keeps you humble is a God center.
I feel,
so.
I'm pardon.
Go ahead.
I feel that we have to begin to focus on our families, organize within our families, and stretch out. We've got to belong to some organization, a church, a lodge, a mosque, a masjid, in Black Hebrew, Israelites, whatever. We got to belong to an organization. And I was listening to a Gary Knoll commentary hour. And you go on the internet, Google Gary Knoll.
Let me, you'll have another minute.
July 25th.
The God in me loves the God in you. Taste to him. Peace. Go ahead, Leon.
Gary Knoll commentary hour. You go on to Google, put that in, and you're looking for the July 25th, 2018 commentary hour. He's got a guest on talking about the economy and how this thing is set up worldwide in the precarious position that it's in. Because you can play it over again, you'll cut it off and then come back and listen to it. Also, next week on Discovery Channel, there is Suicide While Handcuffed. It's a story out of Iberia, Louisiana.
Thank you for coming. Julian, we'll see you again soon.
Yes.
Before you graduate, of course. We got 2 more years.
When they say
Thank
think
you for
small,
coming.
dream big.
The God in me loves the God in
Yes.
you. Stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. Peace.
Peace.
Power to the people.
Thank you.